Hello everybody, I just wanted to make a quick video. I've been asked the question a couple times recently about some game development on a Chromebook, and in particular about installing Godot on a Chromebook, and there's nothing special about it, but I thought I would go through the steps anyway, just to have it out there, because for some reason it's been asked a couple times lately. It does require the Linux desktop app, so if you're on a Chromebook that's like locked down by a school or something, it is kind of restricted there. That's not a Chromebook thing, that's a school thing. Like, I work at a college, and the college gave me a very powerful Windows machine, but I can't really do anything on it except check my email. I often think they could have saved a fortune by buying less powerful machines if the only thing every employee at the college is allowed to do is check our email, but that's for a different department than mine. But if it's your own Chromebook and you have access to it, first thing you want to do is make sure the Linux environment's on. And depending on when your Chromebook was made, it should have been turned on by default. Lately, it's been turned on by default, or I should say, it might have been turned on by default. But if you go to Settings and scroll down to Advanced and under Developers, you'll see this Linux development environment. And depending on when the Chromebook was made, there might be a button here that says Turn On. Just click that button, and the defaults will probably be good. The only thing you would really change is how much storage space off your hard drive is dedicated to the Linux machine. But the rest of the regular storage space is still accessible. It's a subsystem sort of thing. But once you turn it on, and it takes about 5 minutes to set it up, you'll have a terminal. I have it in the task menu, but I'll go ahead and search for it, because if you just turn it on, it won't be there. So you'll search for terminal, and that it'll open up a bash shell. So we have the bash shell here to do all the regular Linux application stuff. Chrome OS is just a Linux application, so we can always get back to that background and do stuff, but they put a desktop here so we don't have to go into that background one to do the Linux terminal stuff. So you want to set this up, and then we just need to go download Godot, and I'm going to go ahead and take it a step further. So just do a search for Godot, and right there on the home page you should see download latest. So when I'm making the video, 4.1 is the latest. So if we download that, and it should recognize, if you're using your Chromebook, it should recognize that you're on a Linux system. So if you're downloading it somewhere else and it tries to download Windows or something, just switch to the Linux download and choose the latest one. Should be fine. So while that's downloading, I want to go ahead and download something else as well, because Godot 4, there were some really nice improvements there, and one of them is full integration with Blender. So the sort of de facto standard for open source 3D modeling, which if you're wanting to get into game development, you probably want to make some nice models, and Blender has much better tools for making models than Godot does. So if we go just go to Blender's page, again, just search for it, and when you hit download, it should again recognize that you're on a Linux system. If it looks for a different one, just the button down below will have the links to the other versions. Download the latest Linux version. 3.6 works fine on a Chromebook, so I'm going to go ahead and download that. It's kind of a big file, it might take a second, but shouldn't take too long. And both of these are essentially ready to run, so there's some cleanup steps we can do. Alright, that's downloaded, so I'll go ahead and close these, and I'll go over to the File Explorer, and in Downloads folder, there's this zipped folder, just a regular .zip that has the Godot stuff in it. If we go in there, you'll see there's only one file, and this is the latest stable version of Godot. Just go in here and copy this. So I'll hit Control C to copy and paste that. I'll just use the home directory on Linux. There are probably better places. It's kind of a large file. After we unzip it, it's compressed quite a bit. It's a whole bunch of text files, a whole bunch of code, a whole bunch of C++ code that's been compressed. So it compressed very, very nicely. So once we uncompress it and go to copy it, it takes a moment. And while that's going, we do need to also unzip that the Blender file. So Blender came down as a tar .xz. So I'm just going to copy that whole tar file, hit Control C, or could drag and drop it. I'm just going to select it, hit Control C, and over in the Linux folders, paste that in. And on a Chromebook, since it is a Linux system, we can just double click on the tar file and it'll automatically open up for us. I'm going to go ahead and go into the terminal because it's a little bit quicker if we just go extract it like normal. Looks like all those messages are finished, so everything's copied over. So if I list out what's in this folder, there's the Godot version and Blender. We need to extract that real quick. So it's .xz, so we do need special instructions. So tar-xf is all we need. If it's X and Z, it'll automatically handle the compression from the Z when extracted. That's what that extension means. So -sxf, and then the name of it, which I'll just copy and paste because that's quite a big name there. And that should extract the folder. There's a lot of stuff in there, so it'll take it a moment to extract, but it shouldn't take too long. Yeah, and well, that's taking longer than I was thinking, and the screen recorder I'm using doesn't have a pause thing. But Blender is really nice 3D modeling software. Godot has several rendering pipelines available. Godot 4.1 has a Vulkan pipeline, which you have to have a GPU to run. Some Chromebooks have a GPU, so if you have a GPU, you can use that. But if you don't have a GPU, you might need to use a slightly different format. That's taken a long time. Maybe I should have went in the other way and done it. Oh, maybe it's... Nope, it's still going. Okay, there it goes. So now that we have that file extracted, we can remove that zip folder. We don't need that anymore. Remove, recursively copy and paste that big long name in there. So now we just have the two applications we need. So I'll go, this is blue color coded. Your machine might be a little bit different, but blue indicates a folder here on mine. So I'll navigate into that folder that we unzipped, copy that, and paste that in. And when we list things out, you'll see in here there's a file called Blender Launcher. So that's the one we'll need to launch Blender. We'll get to that in just a second. So if I go back up to the home directory, and this is currently just a file. If I list it out with -L so we see the permissions, we'll see in the Godot it has read and write permission for the owner, which is me, and then read permissions for the public, and read permissions read permissions for a group, and read permissions for the general public. We need to change that to executable permissions. If you haven't done Linux permissions before, we add three numbers together. So a 4 for execute, a 2 for reading, and a 1 for writing. So we want to add execute to the user, so that we need a 7 there, and we probably want anybody in the same group, any user in the same group as us to be able to execute. So I'll add 4 to the 1 there and get a 5. Oh, sorry. Write is 2 and read is 1. And I'll go ahead and put execute here. So I'll do change mode to change those permissions. And I want to put 755 to that file, which I'll just copy and paste the name because it's kind of a lot there. So change permissions to read, write, and execute. Read and execute, and read and execute. So now if we list that out, see it's green, so that means it should be ready to run. So dot to indicate the current directory, and in our current directory there is that folder file. It should still be on the clipboard, and when we run that, the Godot engine should start up pretty quick. We don't need to go check out the asset library for now. We can just go create a new project. I'll just go with that default name. Oh, whoops. I'm going to click this button. Create a folder with that name. And the one thing we do want to change is you want to switch to compatibility. So Forward Plus has some really nice rendering pipelines. So it moved to a Vulkan rendering pipeline instead of an OpenGL rendering pipeline. You do have to have a GPU or at least something like the Intel integrated GPU in order to run the Vulkan pipeline. But if you switch to compatibility mode, it'll work fine. So just create a new project, switch to compatibility mode, and hit create and edit. And that'll open up Godot with a new project. And while that's opening, I'll go ahead and open Blender. I'm going to ignore this warning. This is actually kind of a nice thing I was going to show here in a moment. So it says blend file import is enabled with the project settings, but it's not configured. So when I checked this earlier, oh, it is here now. So to set that and get rid of that warning, we need to point at where Blender's at. So there's two settings. One of them, well, we saw the warning, so it's obviously there already. Under project settings, if you go to the general tab and scroll down to file system, but I don't see it on here. Oh, there it is, file system and import. There's a checkbox to enable Blender. So Blender is fully integrated here. We don't have to do any cumbersome exports and then imports into different software. We can just put our Blender files right here in the project. Make sure that checkbox is on. And under editor settings, if you scroll down to file system here, which this one's in alphabetical order, so file system's near the top. Under import, there's this thing, Blender 3 path. So just select that and navigate to where Blender's imported. So I need to go up a directory. So there's Blender. So I'll go in here, and here's the launcher. So we want to point at this folder that has all of those Blender files. So right in that folder that we unzip from the tar file. So we'll select that, and that'll get rid of that warning. And after you change the editor settings, you do need to close the editor. So this is the editor. Settings go to the configuration file. So this is just this save message about this little what's in the editor, not that setting we just changed. So I'll just go with a don't save. Some warnings and things are going to show up. Most of them are like these that relate to things that require a GPU. You'll probably see that on a Chromebook, but not a big deal. You'll notice it still thinks it's running, so push Control C when you're, Control C to cancel the current running operation. Now we can just restart that. And it's probably a good idea to rename those things. I probably should have done it already. If I list that out, there's this big long name. So not a bad idea to rename it to just Godot. That's a lot easier to type. I'm going to keep copying and pasting. But you can rename it. Probably should have renamed this before pointing the file path at it, because that could cause problems to rename it now. But or put a shortcut, an alias or something, so that you can type a shorter word. But we've got that setting, so I'm going to hit Control, copy that name, and current directory, dot for the current directory, a slash for in our current directory, and paste that in there. And it'll start Godot back up, and we can open the project again, and now everything should be set up. Notice the different errors. So these errors have to do with the GPU. So texture allocation, cache, we can't cache our textures. So if we're going for like trying to get photorealism, it's a little bit hard if we don't have it halfway loaded already. This is a really advanced feature that we can live without. Again, with the GPU, we can. It gets into the linear algebra of how the thing 3 dimensions are actually displayed, and we can move it to an array, which makes it a little bit quicker, and then we can cache those arrays, which makes it very quick, and that's how we get some parts for the photorealism. So basically those errors are saying that you won't be able to get all the way to photorealism on the Chromebook, which isn't really a problem because you could write all the code for it here and then run that on another computer that does have a GPU, and it would work fine. So here's our thing. I'm going to go ahead and open Blender. So that's taking up this terminal, still running, so I'm going to open a new tab in the terminal. And still in that same directory, so I'm going to change directory into that Blender one, which it would have been a really good idea to rename that to probably just Blender instead of all of that stuff. And then in here we have Blender Launcher. We can type that one, and it's already in green, so it already has executable permissions. I'll list those out. Blender Launcher, we already have, looks like 725 permissions, but we have executable permissions on it to run that. There's X's in there. So if we do /blender-launcher, it'll pop up Blender here. Hopefully it won't take too long. It's already taken longer than I was expecting. There it goes. Quick setup. Yeah, English looks good. Select with the mouse key. Oh, shortcuts are Blender, so I guess there is a shortcut there already. Defaults are good. General setup. I'm going to hit A to select everything. And shift backspace is delete. Or, sorry, not shift backspace. Everything button, the one with the magnifying glass. Search button. The everything button and backspace is delete on a Chromebook. Then I'll just add some sort of mesh, maybe a UV sphere, and scale it along the y-axis a little bit so it's not a perfect sphere. And we'd build our nice fancy models here. Probably come over to something like edit and preferences and turn on landscapes. If we go to add-ons, search for landscape, and hit that checkbox, and then we have a insert a landscape button. I'm just going to go with a stretched out sphere for this one, so when I go to save it, Control S to save it, and here's that new game project we just created. So I'm going to go in there, right in the game project, and create a new folder for, I'll call it Blends. That seems like a good name for it. Then in that folder, I'll just leave it untitled. That's fine. This is a quick demo. We'll save it there right in the game project so that when we go back over to Godot, notice it automatically jumps to the importing assets. And it should just take a couple seconds. And now we have this Blends folder. And our Blender files stay stored right here. So if we create a new 3D scene, there's our basic node. We can drag this up here and make that a child of the node. So notice there's no cumbersome exporting into a different format and then re-importing. And we just do Blender directly right in here and bring our models right into our game. I'll go ahead and run this scene. Oh wait, there's no light in the scene. Cancel that. I usually prefer to make the light, but I'll just add the testing light and environment here so we can see stuff. Oh, we won't be able to see anything, will we? Add a camera 3D, and now we can see. Now we'll be able to see stuff. Which way is that pointing? Preview mode. Okay, yeah. So we can see something that way. Just for a quick demo. Oh, got to save the scene. Sure. The default name's probably good. And when it runs, we can see our 3D model from Blender, the environment, the lighting, the shadings coming through. I didn't do anything with the textures or anything with materials or textures. We have some But those warnings earlier were indicating that we can't quite get to photorealism on a Chromebook. That's what those warnings over here were. We can't cache our materials, or we can't cache our textures, so it does take full time to load them, and we can't use arrays to move things from the CPU or from RAM into the GPU. So we can't get quick enough to do photorealism, but we could write the code for it here and then do a build on a machine that can. So that's really not even a problem. And then you can just do the normal Godot game development to build your game on a Chromebook if that's the machine you have. So you can see there's nothing exceptional about it, as long as you're not on a Chromebook that's locked down by a high school or something. But that's locked down by the high school. That's not a Chromebook thing. That's a school thing. I have the same thing with the computer the college issued me to use in my office, that I can't really do anything on it except check my email. So something schools like to do. But if you have your own Chromebook and have permission to actually do stuff on it, game development on the Chromebook is no problem. That question has been thrown my way a couple times recently, so I thought I'd make a quick video to see that. Hope you found that helpful. And when you close out of these, again, just one last quick reminder. Close that. And I'll close out of Blender. And over in the terminal, notice Blender did fully close. But, oh, whoops, canceled. Over in the other tab, it still thinks it's doing something. So make sure you hit Control-C, which is the command to cancel in any terminal. Bash, PowerShell, Zfish, whatever terminal we're writing our commands in, Control-C is canceling that. So make sure you do that at the end of the Godot. Otherwise, yeah, you can see it's straightforward. Hopefully you found this helpful if you had that question. I just thought I'd make the video because that question was unexpectedly thrown my way a couple times recently. So